So, first of all, thank you very much for coming. My name is Lars Jorgensen. That's a hard name of the Danish name. I work in a Danish-based Drupal company called Drupal. And I'm going to share some experiences with you today on building a rather large organization that we still have to maintain. I would love to say I would have the terminal open all the way through the session. Unfortunately, I won't. I started as a developer. I can honest to God say I have committed something on a Drupal 5 installation, but it's long ago. The majority of my Drupal work I have done as a project manager and a key account, and I really care about Drupal. I care about solving issues the Drupal way. I care about solving the business issues and getting the system alignment all the way from your design into something that makes sense in Drupal. I honest to God get frustrated when we can't do that. And we have this project that I'll get into that was a big project with lots of different stakeholders, and we wanted to get them in to have a flexible system where they could do a lot of stuff themselves. And in order for that to work, it was imperative that we kept them in something that made sense in Drupal, but it was also imperative for them that we met their business goals. They will, I'll get into all that. I really don't mind. Go ahead and ask me questions along the way. I will make sure to keep the time. I'm guessing I have till 12:45, right? Yes. Yeah. So I'll tell you something about the challenge. I'll tell you something about the design process, not design per se. We're not going to go into why did we choose that color red. What's the emotions behind that? But I'm going to go into how we chose to structure the design process. I have some thoughts on using the design system. Also, there was some point where we didn't really succeed in the way where I wanted to. I'd like to share that with you so you don't have to make the same mistake. Being agile on the specification, always interesting, especially if you're a project manager. I'll try to keep it short. And if there are PMs here, I'm happy to go into it, but I think it's interesting as a developer as well on how can you aid in keeping a project agile and still keeping within the business framework. Because if we don't, the business will crash and that will be the end of it. So we have to figure out how to work amongst us with these things. I have an idea to the system and I'm going to share it with you. This was funny how to gracefully let someone mess up your project. This was a collaboration between 7 different regions, television networks. They have a huge number of employees, they have a huge number of editors. They had insisted on getting CSS and JavaScript rights, and there you have it. Then you know what's going to happen. They're going to mess everything up, and how do you adjust for that? How do you turn that into something positive? And I think we found a way, and I would like to share that with you as well. And I'm going to go over here. So, the challenge. So we won this project. It was based on a government contract, meaning that even though we want to be agile, there are specifications. You must know this as well. Hard specifications. You stand up, you put your hands out, and you accept the handcuffs that they are. But I also had a very, very reasonable PM on the other side, defined per se. And we came up with this idea that we would deliver their demands. Of course we would. That's the basis of all negotiation. But their demands work better than we need the system to be able to do this and this, and we need it to be flexible, and we have to have these elements that we can shuffle around. But also we're a full service agency. So we kind of had to take it all the way from the how should this look? They had no idea. Should be kind of news television station like, but different, 7 different. All right, you know. So they couldn't live up to their hardcore specification themselves. So had to find a way. It was in their interest as well. Yeah, United Nations, I mean, they were used to having their own website. These were not necessarily people who were designated to be in a togetherness. But for this project to succeed, we wanted to have them to have the exact same code. Not an installation and then just everyone on their own, but the exact same code, because that was the mandate behind it. They wanted to save money. So there was quite a huge governance act to getting them in on this mandate. But we had the key argument in the world: money. If you go each your separate direction, you won't make the savings that you want to. So we kind of kept them in that, and we succeeded. So right now we have, I wanted it to be a multi-site installation, but it's not. It's 7, just because of how we host things. So it is 7 installations, but they have the exact same code. So 3 years after, there are 7 different regions. They have the exact same code. I think that's an achievement in itself.
Actually, yeah, that is.
Yeah, and it takes its toll every day. But they have a gentleman agreement. So they can still fund something on their own. They can fund it via their own community. But if they fund something on their own, they have this gentleman agreement not to use each other's funded projects for a year. Otherwise, you have to pay for it. But everyone gets the code. So they kind of advertise for each other. Hey, I kind of made this nice quiz module. It's right there. All you have to do is click it. But if you click it, it'll cost you. And so it works like that. Yeah, make a tool that's useful. These are not your everyday webmasters. These are, we serve the whole Danish population. Overall, it's like the Danish National Radio with the amount of business. They have a lot of news editors, and they need to be able to work with it as a news site. It needs to be messy and flexible, and it needs to be able to, if there's a current event, they need to be able to put it up there like that. You know, the classic Drupal media challenges, and still then they need to be able to move things around and do different theme pages with colors and background photos, and they can't call the development agency all the time. And oh yeah, they add new people all the time. They hire someone new every day in some region. You know, so the system needs to be, you know, fixed, and they need to be able to help each other. But by giving them the same system across 7 different regions, they can train their own people. They can even learn from each other. So, oh, so those guys did this with that, and then they can plank it. And right now, they actually have their quarterly meetings at our office. It's fantastic. So we can teach them something, they can teach us something, and they can share from that shared community. Right. This kind of ones. So there are 7 regions. And it's one framework. Surprise! It's responsive. Who would have thought? Yeah. This is Denmark. Yeah, beautiful. So the design process. We decided to use pattern map. How many of you are familiar with pattern map? That was not a lot.
It's a half hour as well.
Okay.
Is
So
similar to atomic design or something like that?
yes, it is. Brad Frost, who writes a lot about atomic design, has come up with pattern map. Pattern map is essentially just a little framework that can hold your front-end code, and then you can connect with the PHP node, and you can have some test data in it. What we use it for is that we build the front end as part of the creative process. So we build the front end first, and then the Drupal installation afterwards. It makes it easier to, when you have a specification, you can even send a link to the specific front end that it needs to link up to. Then, and I'm sorry for this, but then it's a little bit of an un-Drupal way, but we actually match the templates in Drupal to the front end, and not the other way around. But it makes it really easy for us to maintain a big installation like that. If you're building a lot of small Drupal sites, I wouldn't recommend it. But for these big things, it's fantastic. We keep all the edge cases in pattern map. tempted to show you. Oh, why do I do that? So this is a pattern lab for the resolution does not work with me for one of the sites. So this is not a working site; it's just all the front end elements that they can use. And this atomic design principle means that we build all the elements of the elements on their own. So a button is part of a widget, that is part of widget space, that type of thing. So we kind of avoid that building everything ground up all the time. If you haven't seen Lemonade, it has a disco mode that I can't see for the resolution. You have to go and look at it yourself. It'll resize everything and it's really fun. Yeah, I'll go back. What we realized also was that these guys needed a tool. So what you saw was a lot of different elements that we could use. So we came up with this multi-teaser term. Essentially, it's a Drupal thing that takes any number of nodes destined by type, so it could be articles, banners, whatnot. Then it chooses them based on taxonomy. So articles with sport from a certain city, and then then you can select a view mode, say an article with an image, or just plain headline or something else. And with that, we had all these different elements that the editors could build. They had, of course, tons of different ways that they could look because they had this mix and match thing going on. But then they could set up their sites. Of course, there were hero elements and whatnot, but they can all be put in. We use panels mostly, but for a lot of the node pages, we simply just have these widget areas that you can put stuff into. But it's the same stuff, so they can reuse their things. So if you have that widget with sports elements from Viborg or from Socket, then you can just reuse it and dump it in different places.
What were the elements? Were this some kind of entity references?
I think we did them as entities, yeah. That's where the not coding formula thing comes in. So, no, but I think we did, yeah. And then the top thing to realize is that these were local news networks. So they weren't interested in winning a design award. They were interested in getting a tool that they could use for something that was practical. So how the fuck do you design something like that and match the client needs? And we had this specification that we had to hit. We had no idea how it was going to look. We didn't know what their exact needs was. Of course, we looked at all the major news outlets, and then we made some workshops with them. Fantastic workshops where we try, and this is actually my message, and what I want to give to you is trying to convey that Drupal terminology you have in your head onto someone who has no idea. And this was what we did, and this worked. And I've done it again afterwards. So we made little clippings of all the Drupal elements, not designed Drupal elements that had the functionality that they were requesting. So multi-teasers with article with the video trailer, a big gallery, another multi-teaser with just headlines. Yeah, we had a lot of cultural engagement with live TV and whatnot, but those were their requirements, but they didn't match up to necessarily the people who were to use it every day, the people who needed to make an engaging front page. So we did 2-day workshops where they built their front page and built their theme pages. And then all of a sudden we realized, okay, but we need this element to be big, or we need this element to do this and that. And then before we had coded anything, we kind of had better specifications on what they were. Because the thing as a demand, I don't mind if it's an element is big or small, it doesn't change the price. But if I have to change it 8 times, that changes the process. I want to drive that Drupal understanding of what it is. So now I have a client that actually understands, okay, so these are the elements and these are the inner workings, and if they want to change something, they know that they should change how the element looks, not what's in it. And that's really what makes the big change. So they now all the changes that are not big functionalities, but understanding, of course, but they just change how the appearance is. Yeah, you with me so far?
Yeah, do you have a presentation online?
You can see the websites. Oh,
I mean, like,
oh, no, I'll share it with you. Just hit me up on Twitter and then. Yeah, so this was where we went wrong, if you ask me. Perhaps I should show you the sites. Not a disaster, but you know, I would have, next time I'll do this differently. So these are the sites. Like I said, it's not about winning a design award, but this was what they came from. You can laugh now. And it's not responsive, and it's bad, and whatnot. But this is one region, this is another. And the others have variations on that theme. Built on the exact same code, it's even more or less the same CSS. The CSS just has some variables that we override for each region. Yeah, tons of stuff going on. But what I think we missed a little bit, since they were so occupied with building this tool, was that it became a conversation about the tool. So, and they wanted to be small, and they wanted to have small variations in design, and essentially we were working with pattern labs. We got into this whole boxes with other boxes, and then there were boxes system. And we had headers and footers that were unique, but they were really small and they weren't that unique. We had taxonomy pages, or we have taxonomy pages where they can choose background images, and there's some variations on that. They can choose colors, and there are news pack where you can choose some design, but it's not vibrant to use a word. If you look at the other news media, they're a little bit more out there. You know, it has the messiness within the elements because we messed around with the CSS. But yeah, so this is my share to you that even if you get caught up in this tool thing, make sure that there's a point where you really talk about design as well, because in the end, it's a lot of people looking at design, and effective is. It's nice that we achieved that effectiveness goal, but I would have liked it to be a little more design. So this whole building stuff, and we got caught up in the clippings. Oh, we can do all the stuff, and we're all happy, and everyone's happy. Yeah, but you know, where's the? It should be red because my heart is, you know, it has to be, you know. So for that, I'm a little sorry that we got caught up in the design system thing. And there's some guys writing some stuff right now about the disadvantages of design systems, because it does that. It gives you the handcuffs on. And I can just say we kind of experienced that a little bit. So whenever you build your sites in Bootstrap and whatnot, also remember that at one point someone is going to have a unique branded design, at least as a few elements. Everything else can be Bootstrap. So those workshops is a recommendation though. They really laid the groundwork for copying off each other, which is a nice, simple thing to do as well. So I can really recommend that. And then I have a goodie about the design, but I'll get back into that. This is the project management side of it. What we did in order to manage the project, and it was 4,000 hours of run, and I think we've spent 10,000 hours on it over 4 years. So it has some size. And what we did in order to keep the project agile and still fixed was that we, of course, then you have to break it down, you have to do your guesstimates, and then we started, we have a quite simple time tracking. We use harvest. We put hashtags, or actually just GIDs on most of the things that we're broken it down, so then we just measure on those. So when you have that amount of hours, you can't catch everything before it happens. Like if you have 10 people working and you have things broken down into 10 and 20-hour tasks, you're not going to catch that 20-hour task midway saying, so people are you on top of your estimate, you're going to keep it. It's not going to happen because it's just too much. But we can catch it afterwards via the automation. So I came up with this sheet. Dramatic music. And I did not invent, this resolution. I did not invent the wheel. But what I did do was I broke the project down. Even the creative stuff, and we kept breaking it down. So whenever we learned something new, we broke it down, shared the divided estimates, and that's a pain in the ass. But it really helped. It really helped because I shared this with the client. That was the agile part of it. So it was something between him and us. So what's going on with your project? How much are you talking to me about this? Is it a good idea to keep talking, or should we move along? Are we adding value? We took the specification and we broke it down, so we took the buffer out. So I had buffer to spend on something where I was like, I don't care what you think, I think this is important, type of thing. But what we did was then all the red indicates that, hey, this is something we should talk about. And it had the actual budgets in the bottom. Again, I'm not trying to be project managers. I'm trying to say that if you want to keep a client happy with this, you have to be able to talk about how's it going with the small things. Are we on track or are we besides track? I depend on the developers on the project as well to say, okay, I'm on this. I mean, Gia tells me how's it going with the estimate, and that made for us to have the conversation. Is it a good idea to keep talking about this? One of the most important things. And we actually managed to keep them in an agile mode because the things that were not important to talk about, we can't just, we need the people focus over here, and that's how it. So that was the transparency. I highly recommend it. It's tough, but I mean, if you have that amount of hours, you kind of want to have this guidance somewhere. And skip something here. Yeah, of course, all the classic agile stuff, like first content types in first, so the client can start put in real content. So when we work with the site to work with real content, the thing that the sheet gave me was that when the client starts talking about other stuff, or developers have other stuff that are important, they will turn up as something that does not belong. And I don't mind the stuff that don't belong, but I want to be able to talk about it. I don't want to just have big chunks of unknowingness. And that's what that gave us. And as soon as we had that set up, we had low effort reporting because everything was just imported automatically into that sheet. You can do that in a million different ways, but you want to have something set up where you automatically increment what's going on. Yeah. And this is. Then we're going to move on to one really project management comments, and then that's it. Cheating is loud. None of you will be able to, or I assume none of you are able to understand this comment, but when we released the third region, we had made a plan with the guy in front of us, and we had made the official plan. So this director here, he praised us to the skies of the world, because he had no idea that the official plan was delayed, or the unofficial plan was delayed, or his plan was way ahead. Cheating is allowed. It's always allowed. And I highly recommend it, because like getting those directors on your back is just a drag, and when you get in a month ahead of time, they're going to be like, oh, what happened? Is this magic? No, it's just 2 sets of plans. Service and delivery. My God, were we swamped. Because when you release something and you give it to 7 regions, the amount of feedback that they have, Jesus. And so I have some learnings that we did on that. We were overwhelmed, and what happens when you're overwhelmed is that you can get really behind, you can start doing things in flow. Also an agile thing, and we put a lot of stuff in flow, and that was not the way to go. Because when you have a complex installation like that, just pushing tickets and someone giving them the best shot to solve them, when you have this whole, because the complexity of having this whole system where everyone should be able to use things and stuff that just gets solved, that's not what you want. So yeah, be honest about what you can and cannot estimate. Have someone that catches the tasks that are both UX design, front-end and back-end tasks. Make sure that everything that can flow to specific roles can. And this counts for developers, for me, for everyone. If a task is unclear, it's still your responsibility because you're the grown-ups. When these guys are not the grown-ups, they're editors. They have another job. Their job is not to write a clear definition, but if you start a task that is unclear when it's done, it's going to end up being your fault, and that sucks. So it's much better bouncing the task.
What do you mean with flow is not always good?
That was that thing where we had we put the guy who was a fantastic agile guy and just made all these routines, so we just had things in flow to a lot of people, but keeping the quality and exactly catching those things when you have a higher idea with a solution, then flow is not always good. Of course, flow to good decisions and then doing the task is always good. Okay, so that was the PM side of it. I'll move along now. This was the funny thing. And I'll even move on to the next slide. This started happening. So we had a professional Drupal installation serving the entire nation. We had pattern lab, design workshops, fantastic Drupal backend, and then the editors started putting stuff like this in. And if you're in doubt on my opinion, it's the ugliest thing I have ever seen in my life. And you can't control that sort of thing. What's worse is that behind this is some JavaScript and some fonts, and I think you noted this was done by an intern on TV Syd. He had been there for 2 or 3 weeks. His coding credentials were, I found it somewhere. I think he noted all the JavaScript in the world, include all. And it brought the performance, the Google page speed performance of the sites to an almost complete halt. And what happened then is that what we could have done is that we could have sat down in each our different pitch and then started shouting at each other. Instead of what fortunately happened was that one of our guys caught this before they did, and we opened this very friendly dialogue. Hi, I can see that you put something on your site that might do something that was not your intention. Would you like some help to fix this? That's the way you want to go about that. If you ever have an opportunity to go that way, that's the high road. So then what happened was that they figured out, okay, maybe we have too extensive rights here. And this was one of the things for the public bit, they insisted on getting those rights. Getting the right to do it. They wanted full flexibility. That's what they thought full flexibility meant. That was having the rights to do JavaScript. It really isn't, but sometimes it's just too hard explaining that to people, especially people who can code a little bit. Those are the worst. So what did we do? We gave them an API for their own system. So we gave them an opportunity to catch the fonts, catch some JavaScript, whatnot, just small things, and then we started adding on it as they needed it. Boom, issue away. So now they can put the stuff on. Still, I go like this sometimes when I see it, but they don't ruin our project. But then what happened? And this is the funny story. They have all these creative people sitting around. They don't necessarily code too well, but they also have a high tolerance of stuff going wrong. They just don't. They just hate it when it's our fault. You know, if it's our fault, it's the biggest disaster in the world. If it's themselves, you know, we're just trying stuff out. Go on in. But after we created that API, especially one of the regions started coming up with all their own stuff. They completely changed the layouts. They made their own sliders. And some of the other regions told me, "Listen, guys, it's just that on your front page, I can't read on it because the contrasts are all missing." Yeah, you know, we're trying stuff out. Leave me alone. And then what happened is that they moved so much faster than us. So then they got better, and then they started coming up with all these great ideas that we then migrated back into the system. Then we did them properly, and you know, fixed all the issues and performance optimized and whatnot. And they still had this real-life sandbox they could work in. I think we spent 15 hours on giving that API, and it's been the most positive thing that I ever shared with a client. I can highly recommend letting them in instead of, because I've taken that discussion many, many times. You know, no, you cannot have the rights to commit code, or they say those things like, yeah, but we want just access to the FTP so we can post another site, and, you know, all those arguments. But this kind of, that eats that thing out. So, yeah. So, this is me over here. And that's every client in the world over there, if it's themselves. And then we're all. Yeah. Yes, 10 minutes. I use the slide opening just to be clear, this is not my president. But he does one thing right, and that's keep talking to your client. And that's what happened for us here. That we made many mistakes, and you know, sometimes stuff fuck up. But I guess my message here is that flow thing. It's with a project this size, or with a project where you have an ambition client and you want to cater to an ambition client, just moving tickets really doesn't do it, or a visit from a client director doesn't do it. That's not it. It's the figuring out a way where you can keep them focused in this area. We have this great idea with this solution. It's supposed to do stuff, you know. So don't just order, yeah, change this to this or this to that. You know, figure out a way to get someone with the strategic, the architectural strategic ideas to be part of the tasks that are important to be part of. I'm gonna have to explain that later. Yeah. So this is actually my last slide. Most of it is what I said already. Yeah. One thing I didn't say is this: having a hotline is not necessarily a bad thing. Since there were so many editors on it, and you know, they would call us for pretty much anything.
How did you agree on payment sides for hotline?
Yeah, I mean, they have support hours as part of their contract, and then they have this 24-hour guard phone which they misuse. And I still haven't figured that out completely. And what's more funny is that I have a phone number that's similar to that card phone, so they actually still call me from time to time.
They were tracking calls.
Yeah, we are tracking it. But instead of making a big problem out of the fact that they call us, because that was my initial thought, or our initial thought, gotta stop calling with all these minor issues, and especially the guard phone, because your site is up and running. The fact that you can't figure out how to do something is not the guard, but you know, you can And even if you explain it to someone, they will hire someone else by next week who has the evening shift. You know, it's just going to keep coming. But instead, we realize this thing that having a hotline is not necessarily a bad thing, because when stuff happens, it's better that they talk to you than they start getting those rumors around. Because I was with them in the initial dinner 4 years ago, when they talked about their old supplier. You know, yeah, it takes 2 weeks to get just change the logo, and they always have to blah 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 blah. And in all honesty, that could be all of us, because yeah, if you have a long backlog and you have a structure and you want to keep it, it takes time to whatever, and no, we keep the integrity of a big solution. So I won't just implement your HTML / other stuff on my site. You know, that's because we don't want to get up at night. But getting them to call the phone and getting some answers from some people with us, instead of talking amongst each other and getting that vibe going, has just proved better, I think. It's a little bit precise to point again. It's about managing things. So that was my last slide. I'm happy to. I'll put a link up on Twitter. No clapping yet. Any questions? So there's 7 minutes left.
Yeah, have you had, because I heard about the editors, have you had an experience with editors who, if there is not enough communication between the developers or the company that developed the solution, the editors, they need something and they like the key person who can do this in the website, so they just like find a workaround, which then later prevents, so for example, instead of tagging something because they, for example, don't have permission to add new terms, for example, so they, instead of tagging something, they like invent some workaround, some smart kind of company, so actually on the same way, actually can do it this way, instead of waiting for the chief editor to come and do something. And then, you know, in 2 months you work with new functionality, which is supposed to use, you know, tagging of the pages. It's only realize those pages are not tagged. They think they're tagged because they will use this workaround, but they actually not tagged.
I think that's a great question. Did anyone of you work on the KK project? It's just a Let's do it. Kaya from the municipality in Copenhagen gave a talk. He has this fantastic example with an editor who made his own breadcrumb. There was no breadcrumb on the site. He found a way of putting a flexible box there and making some anchor links and whatnot. And he just put in a breadcrumb. Ta-da! The site is what I say this. Fuck you. What we've done here, I have tons of projects where we don't work with the client, don't take the responsibility. Then we get all these different editors and they're kind of frustrated and whatnot. And we kind of have to say, yeah, I'd love to help you out with that functionality. Are you entitled to order it? That type of thing. Here they took responsibility themselves. So they have one key person that does the support for them, and the fact that there are 7 of them and that they can learn from each other, it gives them a manual. So I want some inspiration on how to use my Drupal system. Okay, I have all these 7 colleagues that use it in a somewhat similar way to me, so they can see, and they can log in and see how the others did it. So responsibility within the client, or I don't know, the most, or someone in your shop that gathers everything before, and then this being able to look at each other. I actually have other Drupal clients that are so good with Drupal that they kind of they research themselves with other Drupal sites and look at the Drupal.org and say, could we go into this direction? Something else like that. Did they answer the question?
It was more like, how do you prevent the editors going rogue and doing their thing?
Yes, I try to give them
using the site not the way it was intended.
Yeah.
Because they find it more.
That's always hard. What we've come up with lately is building really flexible text editors. So if it's possible to drag in, we integrated with OEmbed, So if they can drag in tons of stuff and put images and galleries and resize stuff within the text editor, they kind of tend to keep it like there. And this whole thing with the flexible widgets and widget areas gives them enough flexibility to stop them walking around. And also, and then there's the other thing, how to gracefully let someone ruin your project. I accept it. I accept that I've given them tools to make stuff that looks bad. I just, so there's a send exercise to it, and then there's giving them something to play with. Exercise to it. Like with children, you know, dangle your keys over here, you don't want them pushing the vase over the table.
So about the scope management, you showed us this Excel file that you were sending to the stakeholders. But I mean, when there is not like a real product owner, taking several stakeholders, it took a while for this to be approved. I mean, it's almost impossible. I would say, how did you deal with this? I mean, when somebody didn't require it?
Actually, there was a real problem. Okay, that was the guy I was sending the sheet I was sending to him. The official plans were with everyone else. So for the official plans, I gave them the handcuffs and the promises and the deadlines and the fixed scope and with stamps on it and the whole bit. And then with my product owner, I had a sort of different project going on. Smoke and mirrors. Yeah. No, but I mean, it's not illegal. But it's legal in the sense that, that was my point. Their diehard specifications were only up to their imaginative level. So it should be a system and it should be able to do this and do that. It said very little about our systems. Yeah, so if I wanted, I mean, the system lived up to the demands, but it was a whole other process that I kind of decoupled from them.
Do you have many change requests? And what's the framework contracts?
Yeah, I did. Well, since we kept it sort of agile within the project, we could kind of mitigate some of the change requests. We actually advised the client to have a change request budget as well. Yeah. We call it the director change request budget. So the stuff that came in from the outside. You can actually see in my budget sheet, it goes what was below. But what hit us where we weren't good was the amount of just feature-based change requests after launch. We weren't geared for that. Essentially, I should have doubled the organization. I don't know what I should have done. Something else. Yeah. But we kept the amount of change requests lower because we had some flexibility within the project. We kept it sort of to technical specification, the demands. So it was easier to move around. So it was also easier to talk about. So it's easier to talk about if something does this, and this. Do you want it to do something else? Or yes, other questions?
What do you mean by gentleman agreement?
Gentleman agreement. That was I couldn't find the female positive term for it. I'm sorry. I would love to be enlightened.
General personal agreement.
Yeah. That's the framework for the governance structure of the installation. So that there's these 7 regions, they have exactly the same code, and they can order stuff within the municipality of it, or they can order stuff themselves, but if they order stuff themselves, they promise not to use it unless they pay for it. So that's the gentleman agreement, and that's the single agreement that enables us not to have this whole coding rights management thing going on. So everyone has the same code. Single agreement, instead of having to manage features and stuff that doesn't work together and design that doesn't work. Everyone gets the same all the time.
But they could build things with a situation where 2 different sides build something which is not compatible to each other.
Yeah, but that's what we avoid, because I mean they can change some CSS and some stuff that doesn't break anything most of the time. And then if they come up with, when they order something, they're actually obligated for it to work on the platform. That's the other thing I kind of solved with that. So if you order something, it should work on the platform. Then